Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Semple. I am I have a private practice counselor and a traumatologist. I work with trauma. Yes, I work with trauma. I work with addictions and addictions also in all aspects. I work with sex addiction and substance addiction, process addictions, and you're going to hear a bit about that tonight. So that's what I do. This is who I am. I also do some volunteer work for a Christian organization by the name of Cornerstone Counseling Service, and I am based in London.
Okay, thank you for that introduction, Mark. So, with no further ado, I think I've given you the facility to share your screen. So please, over to you for the presentation for this evening. Just to let people know, Mark may be asking for questions or comments during the presentation, but we will be leaving plenty of time for any questions and comments at the end. So if you would like to either put your questions or comments in the chat, please use the chat function and I will do my best to get hold of those. But at the end of the session, we'll be giving you plenty of time to ask any questions that you might wish to. Okay, so over to you, Mark. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just show this video and then I will just ask for a few comments on the video if anyone. Okay. All right. Hello. You can take off your mics now who want. I'm going to be asking a few questions. Question. What has anyone striker understand what is happening with the little bird?
Yes.
What you got to say?
I think that the bird, whenever it would touch the yellow thing, it would get really happy, extremely, and then it would get extremely low, and it continued and got worse. The low movement of the baby chick got worse and worse until it would.
You're breaking up a bit, but I understand your premise. Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Was that yellow thing? Was it like drugs?
Drugs. It can be drugs. It can be behavior. It can be anything. Okay, if we say it's drugs, then what?
Was getting a high to begin with, but then after a while, the high, I suppose he would need more and more to get the same kind of high feeling.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me ask another question. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Excellent answers. What did you see happen to the bird as it keep going and going for that the yellow substance?
It got a little bit exhausted.
Okay, that's good. Anything else? Color, what happened to him? What happened to his world?
I'm very colorful.
And then it became very dark.
Thank you very much. Thank you. His world became very dark. Now, my last question to you is, and I don't want you to answer this one because I don't want anyone to know your business. Think about this. Do any one of you, does this bird strike a chord with you in terms of issues that you've been trying to deal with? A lot of times, even our New Year's resolutions feel this way. It starts out very good, and then it becomes very dark because of the fact that we're not able to accomplish what we want to accomplish. You know? And for me, that's one of the things that we need to understand about what I am going to be presenting tonight. Let me just start this and share with you. Tonight is breaking bad habits. One of the things I am going to do, if anyone, I'm going to try not to talk about things that will trigger individuals, personal things or anything that will trigger individuals. However, I will bring up things in terms of trauma and so on and so forth that may make the individual feel uncomfortable. So please just put it in the chat I am a counselor, and really and truly, it's about understanding how people are, what happens to each and every one of us, and how we deal with certain things, and what our brain basically involved in all of this. Now, dopamine, let me start the program. Dopamine is one of the feel-good chemicals that our brain produces. Another one is serotonin, but serotonin more resides in the stomach area. Okay, and serotonin, that is when, if any one of you are on depression medication and so on and so forth, what they're actually doing is giving you an increase of serotonin. When you're anxious and so on and so forth, that's where the most majority of times you feel it in your stomach area, your tummy area. That's where you normally feel it, and that's either an influx of serotonin or a decrease of serotonin, and it would produce different situations. But dopamine is responsible for the feel good, and it also, there are a few things that I didn't put in this presentation because I didn't want it to be too classroom kind of way. It is going to be, but I'll try to make it as fun as I can. Now, there are 3 areas of your brain that basically is responsible for anything in terms of habitual. And that is the prefrontal cortex, which comes down to your eyes, your forehead, and that's the area that makes the decisions, makes the judgment, and so on, and tells the right and the wrong. That's where the area is. And then you have the amygdala, which is what we call in trauma or psychology work, we call the smoke detector of our body, and that is responsible for the fight, flight, and freeze. So then if you start to feel anxious, it's your amygdala that is basically get activated. Now, when you feel anxious, the amygdala would signal the prefrontal cortex and say, I am feeling anxious. What do you see anything happening? And the prefrontal cortex will look around, especially for some of us that basically live alone or in a home. We check the doors, and we hear a bang outside. The amygdala is the first thing that basically get activated. If you hear a bang and you were not responsible for this bang, then your amygdala get activated. And that's what happens. And the amygdala said, well, what do you see anything? And your eyes will start to look outside to see if you see anything. And then you basically said, the prefrontal cortex will say, no, I don't see anything. Then the amygdala moved to the hippocampus and said, okay, if the prefrontal cortex hasn't seen anything, what I am sensing a threat. What did we do the first time when we sense a threat? And the hippocampus says, what we did, because the hippocampus is responsible for our long-term memory. And it says, okay, what we did, and majority of the times, the first time you feel this threat is when you're a kid. We run and hide, we cover our face, we do, and so as an adult, you do the same thing, but in an adult form. Okay? All right, let me move on. This is the cycle of behavior. And majority of the times, this is how we do it. You either opportunities, if most of all, any one of you that are about 30 years and older, you will remember that when computers came into being, every home had just one computer. And basically it was in the living room or in the office. So the opportunity with children was, children were well protected in terms of what they do on the computer. So there was not much opportunity for us to do anything in terms of going on the internet unless our parents logged us on. Now, parents are asking children to log them on. So the children are knowing more than the parents, and even can crack the security codes on the computer and on the internet. So when you look at behavior, there are certain things that opportunity is one, opportunity and attachment is the other, opportunity and trauma is one, and sometimes in terms of our behaviors, it comes down to all three: opportunity, attachment, and trauma that can collide, and that will cause behavioral issues. Okay, yes. Bandura, which was a behaviorist, says that most human behavior is learned through observation, imitation, and modeling. I like this, the picture that I put. It says, when children feel unloved, they don't stop loving others. They fall out of love with themselves. Parenting provides children with emotional regulation skills, which includes the ability to identify feeling, understand their sources, and managing them for optimal functioning. Abuse elicits a range of powerful, confusing feelings. Often, childhood abuse survivors have been raised in family contexts where caregivers, whether they are or not the abusers, offer poor soothing during times of distress and poor guidance in modulating feelings. That in itself, what is those two is saying is that I was brought up in the Caribbean, part of my life in the Caribbean, and then I moved to Canada for most of my life, and I'm here for a number of years in England. However, one of the things that struck me when I came to England and the cultures that I was brought up in, pubs were not for children. And I'm not saying that it's anything, that's just how I was brought up. Even in America, if you actually leave work during the day and go to the pub and have alcohol, you cannot come back into work. That's how I grew up in Canada. But when I first came to England, what surprised me is that they were celebrating my birthday, and my manager and everybody took me to the pub at lunchtime. And I'm thinking to myself, everybody's going to get fired, you know. But I did not realize that it was the culture here. And because is the culture here, then, and I see in terms of parents taking, the children are playing out in the pub yard, and so on and so forth. And the parents may be sitting around having a drink or two, which is fine. However, that child may be thinking in his or her head that this is the place wherein you, and the drink that you use to basically get rid of your sorrows and whatever is ailing you. So whatever we're doing with children, we're teaching them as we go along in certain different atmospheres, even within our homes. And you'll see that later down. One of the things that we need to understand also that comes into play is trauma. We do not, trauma plays a big part in our lives as human beings. Trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event like an accident, rape, bullying, domestic violence, which is DV, being exposed to constant argument in our homes, or natural disaster immediately after the event. Shock and denial are typical. Longer term reactions include unpredictable emotions, flashbacks, and so on and so forth. Another thing that happens with trauma is that trauma overwhelms. When trauma gets into the way, it overwhelms the emotional system, creating both emotional chaos and numbing, undermining our ability to think and act effectively, and disturbing our sense of self and our relationships. So what this second bullet point is saying is that trauma basically makes, or emotionally, we are incapable of handling ourselves emotionally. Okay. It undermines our ability to think and act effectively. And it disturbs our relationship. I'm also, as sorry to say, but I'm not sorry to say, but I forgot to say that I'm also a couples counselor. And you find that a lot of times when couples come to therapy, it's because of the traumatic spin that they're in. And let me explain that very quickly. If both individuals are coming from homes that had trauma, or homes that are dysfunctional, then each individual will be coming with that dysfunction to their home. So when you marry someone, each individual needs to be comfortable in the home that they're in. My dysfunction may say to me, I need at least 2 to 3 arguments a week to make me feel comfortable in this home. And my wife dysfunction may say, maybe I need 5 to 10 arguments in this home to make me feel comfortable. So, and that is how you find that people keep arguing and they say, I don't know what is happening. What is happening is that your brain is basically in a spin, and that's what it has learned, that basically it makes the relationship with each other dysfunctional. It also, it says potential for being re-triggered. So the brain is in a re-triggering mode in terms of how the two of you are dealing or trying to get comfortable in your homes. That was the big T, and then you have little t's. And this little t is what a lot of us basically have experienced. Little t's are the little put downs that we have had as from childhood. And is this child is not too bright, this child is stupid, this child is ugly, this child is too fat, or whatever it is. Those are little t's. But so many little t's basically develops into a big T. And a lot of times, most of us, especially when I work with folk with low self-esteem, it's the buildup of little t's that basically develop low self-esteem also, and even trauma. I always talk to individuals when I do these seminars, I always talk to individuals that if you have to, and I address some of the women and men also, if you have to put on your morning face before you face people, then what you have done is structure that one of, maybe, just maybe, in someone implying or thinking or telling you that, you know, you're not so nice, or maybe you see yourself as not so nice, then the little t has now become a big T in your life. You're structuring your life to accommodate this little t when you may be as beautiful as ever. And I don't see anyone as being ugly, but then people may feel that about themselves. And when they do feel that about themselves, they act in kind to adjust to what is happening. You have bullying is another little T that also can end up for children into a big T. I work with sex addiction. A lot of individuals that are addicted to pornography, especially men, one of the main reasons for them to basically addicted to pornography is bullying. in their lives. Another thing also in trauma is we call it vicarious trauma. And let me explain what vicarious trauma is. The moment we turn on the television, every one of us for the past year, since last year, you have to say last year, January, because we started to hear about COVID since last year, January, in China, and then we start to hear it in Europe. The bombardment of the TV keep telling us about COVID and about the amount of people that are dying. A lot of us have been walking around with vicarious trauma. We're either a bit more anxious. Those of us who are anxious, our anxiety is over the top. And those of us who were not anxious are now anxious. And that's what we call vicarious trauma. You can hear about a trauma and basically the brain makes it its own. And you're traumatized by what you're hearing. And it's called vicarious trauma. So if some of you are feeling very traumatized, very uneasy, very anxious, very depressed, then maybe, and you haven't had it before, maybe, just maybe you need to turn off your television or move from the news channels that are talking about COVID, because all of us have been traumatized by it. I'm not talking about what you should do with COVID or how you should act. I'm just talking about the bombardment of social media with COVID. We're getting it on the TV, we're getting texts and WhatsApp messages about it and everything. And that's one ways in where you can be use vicarious trauma. Also, so I'm trying to build up the different areas in how we can basically start to develop patterns of patterns as we talk about and habits. The next thing that happens is that how we were treated early in our life also can basically develop low self-esteem. It says here, how we were treated early in our lives affects the way we see ourselves and who we are. If children are mistreated, punished frequently in an extreme or unpredictable manner, negative neglect, abandonment, or abuse, these experiences can leave some emotional and psychological scars. It is not surprising that a person who has had these sort of experiences in their early life can come to believe very negative things about themselves. And then this is the one that I talk about in terms of the little T's, the difficulty in meeting parental standards or parent standards, experience less extreme punishment or consistent being criticized can also have a negative effect. If your parents, caregivers, or family member often focus on your weaknesses, your mistakes, your rarely acknowledgements and positive qualities or successes, perhaps saying things such as you could have done better and all these different things, you could get an A instead of a B. Maybe if you had studied harder and these sort of things, development of low self-esteem. So it is something that basically, when you look at it, is what is happening. Four most common mental health issues: anxiety, depression, anger, and stress. Did you know there is a stronger link between childhood trauma and addiction than there is between obesity and diabetes? 2/3 of addicts report being abused as children. That means that the war on drugs is a war on traumatized people that just need help. And these are the coping strategies that we use that basically makes us end up developing bad habits. Either when all this is happening to a child, then the child needs something to basically feel good about themselves. And most majority of the time, we either go down these two routes. We either go down to substance addiction. The rise in cannabis is unexplainable in terms of within the young culture and even adults also. Or we go down to process addictions. And for those of you who are Christians on the site, I normally do this process addiction for Christians and not only Christians, but also different faiths. I do this process addiction work because of the fact that because a lot of different faiths and cultures know that substance addiction is wrong, then what we do is go to process addiction, and I'll explain to you what process addiction is. We know the substance addiction is taken repetitively. It creates a euphoric feeling. However, process addiction is you being your own dealer. Behaviors that done repetitively that creates a euphoric feeling. And so we know about the substance addiction, the hallucinogenic, opiates, stimulants, and so on and so forth, and the depressants where alcohol and tobacco and so on is there. And then we know about this is the process addiction. Pornography, sex addiction, social media, religiosity, sleeping, work, tattoo, cleaning, telephone, self-harming, food addictions, anorexia and bulimia, gaming, computer gaming. Someone has been making some money. I saw something, someone has been making money out of gaming, but that also can be an addiction. Body piercing, gambling, shopaholics, if you want to put that in also. All these different, because the brain is looking for that high that we are looking for. And this is the cycle that we go through. Today I'm in a dormant phase. Everything is going fine for me until something triggers me. Something triggers me can vary as far as the east is from the west. You know, being lonely can vary. So if I'm living alone, it just means that I can be triggered whenever I go home. COVID will trigger me because I am locked up at home. No one is visiting me. So in the dormant stage, you basically doing everything, and then you get a trigger. And then you have the preparation stage. And I use this also in terms of substance addiction also. So it is basically something that we can use in a wide spectrum. You use it for substance addiction, you use it for pornography and sex addiction, you use it for daily addictions, process addiction, and everything that you want to use it for, because it's the same way the brain works towards getting you on that cycle and that behavior pattern. And then you start to prepare for the hit. After the trigger phase, you start to prepare for the hit. You start to do things and make excuses with yourself. You know, you start to, you said cognitive distortion and negative thinking patterns. Many also includes policing behaviors and active strategies that reinforce negative emotions, such as looking through. So for example, you would start to kids do things like start to trouble their little brother or their little sister and these sort of things. So this is how it happens. And then next thing you know, you go into the behavioral phase, wherein you act out, you do whatever you need to do. If you look at people that are in terms of drug users, thieves, gamblers, you call it, this is the same thing that is happening. And then when you do act out, you regret it. And you promise God, if you go down the Christian route, yeah, the Christian route, that act out behavior is sin or whatever it is. And you promise God and you promise your family and everybody, I'm not going to do it again and I regret it and everything like that. And then you basically start, you go down to the reconstitution phase, wherein and then you settle back down to the dormant phase until you get triggered again, and the cycle continues, and we on this hamster wheel or the revolving door, or just keep going around, and the pattern develops. In psychology, they say that it takes 3 times to build a habit and a lifetime to change it. So this is something that you even folk that are have alcohol issues, this is the phase that they go through. So yeah. All right. So emotional regulation, this is what happens in the box here. When a situation happens, for example, if we constantly are having fights at home, then this is what is happening. If you end up doing something that is constantly the same pattern over, then this is your pattern. If a situation happens, the first thing that happens is your thoughts. And you never think of yourself as something that is positive. I speak to a lot of mothers. I also mentor young men, and I speak to a lot of mothers in terms of if anything happened, the young man do anything, she said, oh, I'm a bad mother. I mean, maybe I'm a bad mother, maybe I'm a bad parent, and even fathers. Maybe I should have been there or whatever it is. And you start to speak negative things to yourself. Your thoughts becomes negative. Then your body reacts to that thought. And your heart starts racing, sweating, shaking. It may be other feelings in your body that you may not even be aware of. And majority of the people always say the situation, and all that I remember is the situation and my behavior. And my behavior is either withdrawal or reckless behavior or harmful behavior. And that pattern goes, so if we go back and we kind of tie a pattern to this in terms of how we perform in terms of our emotion and in terms of our behavior, there is help. Understanding such behaviors as ineffective attempts at emotional regulation is the first step in learning new positive and effective strategies to cope with feelings. This is the good part. And I use this in terms of working when I work with folk with trauma, and it can go across the board. The first thought is this, if you are looking at changing your patterns, then this is how we work in terms of getting your what I felt. The old me, I would write down what I felt. The old me. Then I basically look at new strategies in my thoughts. A lot of times, most of us are negative with ourselves. And a negative thought never produces a positive behavior. And when you find something new, some new strategy to try, to change, my body, I may feel anxious, I may feel feelings of anger, or something in my body, then I need to change. What are my new feelings? My behavior, what are my new behavior? Because I'm always arguing, I get triggered. Every time we get triggered, one of the things that we need to understand, it is what we are triggered by is some negative things within our childhood. Let me give an example. For those of you, even if you're not married, if you're living with anyone in terms of being in a home with a multi occupancy or whatever it is, and you leave, I'm just giving an example. Please, if this happened to you, please don't think anything of it. If you living in a multi occupancy home and someone said, why did you leave that cup on the table? What you hear is, why did you leave that cup on the table? What your brain process is basically, you are a dirty person, and basically that's what this person is actually saying. So your answer to that question is not about why you leave the cup on the table, but your answer, if you react in kind, then your answer is based on your childhood, someone telling you that you're a dirty child, you should have cleaned up your room. So this is how your brain hears things and how it processes things. So majority of the times when we answer people in the statement that they make, it's not really us answering them from what we are hearing, but from what our brain has processed that statement to be. So the negative, when we react angrily to someone's statement, is a negative thought that got triggered. Next thing is, the first thing that we need to do is this, and when we are doing this also in terms of we are looking at our thoughts channel, we need to be aware of our negative thoughts and increase our positive thoughts and emotions about ourselves and self-talk. And not what I normally talk to people about is about writing down every day. If you can't do 5 good things about yourself, write down 3 or write down 1 and put it there. Write it down, put it there where you see it, and all through the day, when you look at it and say, this is me, because no one is bad. We just develop bad coping strategies in certain things. We are coming from homes where, as I said in the beginning, that we learn these bad coping strategies either from our parents, from our aunts, from one of our caregivers, even bad teachers. But we all have good qualities about ourselves. So good things, feel good, reduce our stress, start to look at identifying goals. What is it that you want to do? Connect with other people, thought pattern, focus on your attention on positive events and things that have happened in your life. Because our brain is so adapted to basically, for example, if you pass 10 exams and fail 1, oh, I'm a failure. Well, you passed 10, is out of 11 exams, you passed 10. But that 1, the brain basically hijacks it to say, you're a failure. And that's how our brain actually puts us in the spin. So we need to basically be with people and talk positive things to each other. Stop pulling down each other. And this goes across the board. And that's our thought channel or body channel. We need to basically eat the right, have exercising or hygiene or even our surroundings. These are things. Thirst is something that can fool us, that makes us feel depressed when we are thirsty. We need to drink a lot more water. Our diets need to change. A lot of times people ask me to talk about cigarette and coffee, and people drink coffee and smoke cigarettes. And I tell people it's like a push and pull. Cigarettes lower your blood pressure, and coffee raises your blood pressure. So, and people drink 3, 4 cups of coffee during the day, and it raises our heart rate and the blood pressure and everything. And then we smoke on top of it, which so the smoking basically pulls back our heart rate, and then the coffee pushes our heart rate. So a lot of times when we wake up in the morning, that is why a lot of us, the first thing we need to do is to run to that coffee pot, because during the night, your heart is still getting that push and pull from the coffee and the cigarette, and the heart is not getting enough time to rest to basically rejuvenate you. So the next day when you wake up, the only thing that will basically pick you up is a cup of coffee. And I'm not bashing coffee at all. It has its place. But if you do that, then these are the things that you basically expose yourself to. Routine, body care in terms of good diet, leafy fruits and vegetables, adequate sleep, regular exercise, healthy behaviors, healthy mind, and all these different things you need to actually look at. When you're talking about foods, you're looking at pulses and vegetables and fruits and so on and so forth. You know, it improves your physical environment, make yourself feel comfortable, clean the house up a bit. All these things basically lifts your mood. And these are the things that we need to understand. And I'm coming down to the end now. And this is Behavioral Channel. Go out there and try some exercise. Practice what you are good at. Regularly do activities or practice skills that you feel you are good at. Spend time with others, get in touch with others. Often when we feel bad, we isolate and then feel overwhelmed and lonely. Identify activities which will help to expand your social. I always talk about expanding your social network. And these are the things that we can do to basically get us out of the spin of the same cycle that we are doing all the time. So thank you so much. So this is the last one. And if you want to take a picture in terms of how you do this, the changes that you need to do, how you can be able to do it, go ahead. The thoughts, positive self-statement, attention shifting, positive imagery, consider alternatives. Some of us are stuck with some stories that basically, not that it don't make sense, but for you to get out of it, change the story. put a different spin on the story. Your body focus on breathing, progressive muscle relaxing, exercise, yoga, dancing, meditating, and behavioral alternative activities, time out, change facial expression. Don't always, have a annoyed face. Ask for help, call a friend, and talk. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask.
Okay, thank you very, very much for that, Mark. Very informative, a lot of information there that so many of us are going to benefit from. I'm going to ask you just to hold for a moment your questions. If anybody does have a question, if you can either put that in the chat or just hold your question for a moment or two, because we are going to those of you who have been on our sessions prior to this will know that we try and give a little prize for those who have been on the call. So we're picking these at random. And we have a prize for this evening, and I'm going to try and get this on the screen. Okay, so our prize for this evening, can you see that? Can you all see that? Does anybody want to help me? What does that look like?
Fruit.
Or what is it?
Fruit basket.
Fruit hamper.
A wonderful fruit basket. Okay, so we've got a wonderful fruit basket here. And perhaps in some of the distraction techniques that Mark has spoken about of how to, change our mind perspective, this wonderful fruit basket will be winging its way to 2 people. Hopefully you're in the UK. It just makes it a lot easier if we can get these prizes to people in the UK. So the first person we've pulled out is Mags Hanson. Is Mags Hanson here with us, still on the line? I can see your name. Mags Hanson, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So Mags, you may be hopefully happy to realize that you're the first of our prize winners today. Okay.
Thank you very much.
So you'll be getting that wonderful fruit basket sent to you. If you can message me separately in the chat, and then we'll make sure that we can get that fruit basket to you over the next week. So please enjoy. We're not saying that you need any distraction, but if it's helpful to you to put you in a positive frame of mind over the forthcoming week, then we'll be really happy for that. So if you do message me in the chat, we'll make sure that that gets to you. And the second person we have is Charlene Peters. Is Charlene Peters still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Charlene. So again, hopefully you'll be pleased to know that you've won our second fruit basket for today.
Thank you.
So likewise, if you can message me in the chat, we will make sure that those baskets get to you. So no problem at all. Thank you very much for joining us, and we really do hope that you enjoy them. So coming on to questions and comments. Do we have any questions and comments? If anyone is brave enough to unmute, please fire that question. If you'd like to put something in the chat, then Mark will do what he can. We've got a bit of time for questions. So if anybody would like to be brave enough to ask a question.
I'd like to ask a question.
Okay, Max, fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. That was a really informative presentation. Wonderful. I would like to ask if you have got any tips, your top 3 tips on trying to engage somebody that's really resistant to get engaged in a service. So just how you go about breaking the ice if someone's really not wanting to get involved in treatment services, just that conversation you'd have. I always find it a bit difficult knowing the right things to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, that's a very hard one. I work with the NHS for a number of years, and I've had to answer this question in so many different ways. The first thing we need to understand is this. Some people are ready for change, and some people are not ready for change. And we have to accept that as it is. It's a brutal way of saying it, but really and truly, it is the truth. All that we can do is basically in terms of the conversation with people, do not make them feel, some people feel very, what's the word? As if you're blaming them. Victimized, that's the word. Some people feel very victimized, especially to the approach that we use in how to get them to see what is happening to them. And it's across the board, from alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, even to behaviors that people are doing. People can feel very victimized, and it's about how you approach people that really and truly will make them go into treatment or not. And one size does not, Max, one size does not fit everyone in terms of how you can deal with individuals. Most people respond in terms of positive work with them, in positive words and encouragement. Most people respond to that instead of the way that we normally do in terms of the negative response to them. And so I would more go down the road in saying, look, you're doing things that are well, however, you can get more help if you do this, instead of saying, you're not doing good, this is what you're doing bad, and so on and so forth. So highlight the things that they're doing that are well, and then say you can get a little more help in continuing your journey if you basically go here and get some help from these individuals or do this. But majority of the times when we approach these situations, we highlight the negatives about what's happening in front of us.
Okay, is that helpful, Mags?
Yes, that's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Positive reinforcement, as you're saying, Mark, to really help somebody get to the point of them recognizing why they need help and that they do need help and that there needs to be some additional support, and then positive reinforcement, encouragement, rather than knocking someone. I think you had it on one of the early slides, knocking someone's self-esteem and putting them down. That's probably, in your opinion, not the right way to go. So thank you very much. Okay, any other questions or comments from anybody? Anyone brave enough to come online or put something in the chat? Just while people are thinking that through, from my own perspective, do you think, Mark, that there are certain addictions, certain behavior patterns that are more difficult to overcome than others, or does it depend on an individual?
Because I work with addictions, I always say one of the hardest, okay, let me be honest with everyone here. The fastest addiction right now out there is social media. And because it is the newest addiction on in the world, on the market, if you want to put it that way, our brain is not geared to protect us against social media. And because of the fact that, for example, if you sit down watching a movie and the movie is a sad movie, a lot of us cry, and that goes across the board, male and female. We cry, our tears come out. Why? Because of the fact that social media, our brain has no protection against it. It deals directly with both the amygdala and the hippocampus. It bypasses the prefrontal cortex. That is our protective mechanism. Substance addiction, we have a little bit of protection because it's been around for longer. And the brain would fight back in terms of using your kidneys and liver until they basically conked out. But social media, it just goes directly. Social media, there is a research that says that children on a daily basis watching an hour of programs on the TV, they are likely to have 45% as they grow up can develop depression and anxiety. And if you raise that to an hour and a half, you can go from 60 to 70% children basically developing anxiety and depression. So that's just social media, not anything else in terms of they grow up in a nice home and good home and everything, but social media does that to children. And these are the things. So as you realize, there's difference in terms of addictions and in terms of process addiction is also hard because process addiction is us. We become our own addicts and the dealer. So I don't have to take a tablet or some kind of substance to basically get the high. Your brain is creating its own high. And that's very difficult because you have to split yourself and fight against your own brain. A beautiful book, if anyone is into reading, is The Brain Has a Mind of Its Own. That's a beautiful book that you can basically buy and read in terms of looking at how the brain behaves. So I honestly, it's easier to take someone off of substance addiction. Process addiction is a lot more difficult because people have to fight against them. We have to fight against ourselves when it comes to process addiction. Yeah. And process addiction is a hidden addiction.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you've said that about social media and technology. I'm going to broaden it to technology and
technology, yes,
about our phones and so on and so forth. And for those who will know me, I don't know how many people know, I'm not a social media person at all. I probably should be much more, but I have noticed with my phone, I'm on the phone a lot, and often it's work and so on and so forth. But I said to myself, I'm not addicted to the phone. I'm not addicted to the phone. And I've actually found myself walking out of a room and I will go back into the room just to pick up my phone. Mm. Now, that might sound, what's the problem there? But I'm not saying my phone is ringing. I just suddenly think, oh, where's my phone? I need to go back into a room to get my phone that isn't even ringing. Now, when I started to actually just think about what I'm doing, I'm saying this actually isn't right, and I'm not. It's not about judging myself or judging anyone else. But once I'm starting to process what I'm doing, surely that's almost forming an addiction. That I've got to have this thing in my hand all of the time, and I feel that I'm missing something if it isn't on my possession. Now, I'm sure other people on this call, or maybe not, I might be on my own. But if there are other people in that situation and have found themselves doing that, are we at risk of that forming some sort of addiction, Mark? Is that kind of an addictive pattern that seems to be coming up?
Yes. Another research shows that young people touch their phone over 10,000 times per day, and that is minimum. Some people touch their phones over 10,000 times per day. The Apple phone has a counter in how many times you touch your phone. And if I knew I was going to get this question, I would have put it on the system in terms of one young man. He had touched his phone over 25,000 times.
It's frightening.
So it is an addictive behavior. If you leave your phone and you start to get anxiety, you're already addicted.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even talking about losing the phone. A lot of people, the whole world gone, they rather lose their house keys than the phone. Mm-hmm. But and because we stand to lose so much more with our phones, we can always go and cut another key or change the lock, but we lose so much with our phones. And yeah.
Mm. Okay. Thank you. Just a comment that came to mind as we're speaking there. Are there any other points or comments? Any other questions we'd like to put to Mark? I think some of the comments are coming in about phones. A few people seem to be, I've been in a similar place. And I think as Nazi's saying, we are depending on our phones more and more. The questions being asked, is there any ways that we can actually avoid this? And Mark, I know that we have Dr. Judith, who some will know from our earlier session. She might have a comment to make as well. So we'll ask Dr. Judith to come in shortly. I know as part of an experiment a few months ago, I said I was going to go on a kind of fast from my phone. And I said that I would not switch on my phone until 11 o'clock in the morning, and I would switch back off my phone at 8 o'clock at night. So basically just kind of during the work hours, and then after that I was going to turn off my phone. And I was really up for it, and I was really, I said I'm going to do this, and I kind of put the challenge out to other people as well. And I think I lasted about 2 or 3 days. I'd failed really miserably, and it was a real eye-opener to me, as I said, how attached we can be to things. And I certainly don't want to put anybody in trauma. Mark mentioned trauma. We don't want to put people in trauma. But for a little test for everybody on the call, if you don't think it's that much of a problem, try and go without it for a couple of 3 days, or try and reduce your dependency for a couple of 3 days and see how that affects you. And maybe that might be a little warning message to us all. But Judith, I know you've got your hand up. Can we invite you in? Do you want to make a comment on that or another point?
No, mine was a question, so I'll let Mark go ahead and
yeah,
answer.
Mark, if you could answer that, if anything, and then thank you, Judith. We'll ask Judith's question.
What can we do what can we do to avoid this? I think that, okay, let me say this. Each one of us, early 2000, most of us wasn't walking around with a phone. Those that had a phone had a job. And we had the Nokia, those old Nokias that we had, It was preposterous that a 10-year-old or anything lower than 17 had a phone. But 21 years later, and we have even 6-year-olds that have phones. How can we do this? We can basically start to, what I said, in terms of meeting up with each other, talking with each other. And just so the network, building your support network in terms of talking. I normally tell my young men when they go through my program, get off of social media and start talking. Start communicating again with each other. Because we're losing that skill, and people are getting very anxious when other people come around them and started to talk, because they don't know really and truly what to say. They're accustomed to be hiding either in a bedroom or on somewhere and texting, and emotions and all these beautiful things does not get misconstrued in a text.
So the art of conversation, yeah.
Yes, listen to this, 97% of our communication is done via emotions in different sort. Only 7% of our communication is verbal. So 93% of our communication is more in terms of interaction and emotion, facial expression, and all these things. So when we basically, an emoji is not telling me, half the times I cannot read it because I have no idea what, when you young people abbreviate, when people abbreviate it, I got to call my sons to tell me what it is, but I'm fine with that, but it's high time as people. This COVID situation again has alienated us further. So we get accustomed now to the Zoom parties. When we come back together, look at the adjustment, because now we're telling people stand away from me. And now when COVID is all over, if it becomes all over, now we got to tell these people, come close to me. How would we feel in these people? Nobody is sending our brain the memo that it's all right to come together. We may think so. Boris may say it's all right to come together, but because the brain has built this pattern over a year, you will start to get anxious when people are coming close to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got to try and see that, and to break those, to do little things that we can in our home, with our friends, relatives, work colleagues, to kind of break that cycle of, it's almost remote communication, isn't it? And try and bring back personal communication. Is it a little conversation with someone at home? Is it actually speaking? And I'm sure people are saying in the chat, and a lot of us have done this, we will text another person in the actual home, and I'm not trying to knock anybody, but we do that. And maybe it's about stopping ourselves and saying, okay, I'm going to have a conversation, a direct conversation with someone outside of the technology, and try and break it from there. But thank you for that, Mark. I know we've got a couple of questions. Judith had a hand up, and Marcella also has a question, and we still probably got a couple of minutes for a few more, if anybody's got any. So Judy first of all, then Marcella.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mark. My question is, question stroke comment is, I think it was very profound when you said that nothing positive comes out of negative speech. But I feel, certainly if I'm talking about myself, and it might apply to other people, I feel that sometimes the reason why we want to try to change is because we are telling ourselves this negative self-talk. I'm too fat, I'm too this, I'm too lazy, I'm too this, that, and the other. Do you think that's why perhaps we might be failing in having sustained positive behavior change? And then the second thing is, what practical things can we do to change that self-talk and to change a lot of this negativity? Because I know that I shouldn't do it, but I do it. What things can I do practically to change that negative self-talk and believe it? And the other thing is, what things can I practically do to steer into that? When you were talking about we need to do different things with our bodies, we need to actually promote better self-care. Again, those things, we know we need to do those things, but often we don't do those things. What practical steps can we take to actually say, well, you know what, today I am going to go and take that walk, or I am going to drink that 2 liters. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you. Look, even as when I was growing up, I think I've been bullied so many times as a kid, and the negative self-talk and all these different things to myself. And but the way you deal with it is this: I am I am a good looking person. I'm a wonderful person. And you look in yourself, and a lot of times people look in the mirror and they don't see that. And I'm not saying that, oh, I am, I'm just like you. We are all developing, At times when you look in the mirror, you don't see it. But as I normally say to people, beauty does not change. If you're beautiful, you're beautiful. That doesn't change. What changes is our thoughts about how we feel every day. So I am good looking, I'm handsome, that doesn't change. But then today I may wake up, as we would say, on the wrong side of my bed and I feel a little bit, but I'm still the same person. My face hasn't changed. My complexion hasn't changed, And so what we are changing is not us, but is the thoughts that come to our heads. So if I am telling myself that I'm a beautiful person, I need to stick with that. And I need to say it until one day I can see that in the mirror, that actually out of 7 or 8.5 billion people, I am the only one. I am the only Mark unique. They may have several Mark Semples around, but I am unique. In my looks, in my behavior, I am unique. And because I am unique in that sense, I'm beautiful. And when you start to get say these things about yourself, write it out. What are you grateful for? The things you're actually grateful for the day. These positive things, write them out and say them to yourself in the morning when you wake up and before you go to bed. Judith is a wonderful person. Mark is a wonderful person. Mark is a kind person. Say that to yourself. And when you actually keep saying it to yourself, for the same reason you're saying the negative things and you start to believe them, it's the same way you do with the positive things and you believe it. I'm grateful for doing this because I hope that so many people on this platform would be able to understand that they can change themselves and their lives just by talking things that are positive in their heads.
Excellent.
Because we had so much of the negative things from our parents, from teachers, from friends, and people that are implying it. And we take it on.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Judith. Hopefully that's of some help, Judith. We have time for another question. Marcella had a question and maybe time for one more if anybody else has one after this. So Marcella, over to you, please.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you very much, Mark. This has been really, really interesting and good. Thank you. My question, I don't know if I know how to word it, but I'm going to try, and I don't know if there's an answer, but I imagine with most people, there could be a habit, something you do, and I'm thinking about one of mine, and it's not at all a big thing to change. I think it could be done very easily, but somehow I might say you build it up to be something so big you won't attack it, you won't face it. Can you say something about that kind of block? And I think you can't say, because the block depends on the individual probably where it comes from, but how to attack a block that is hindering your life, and you can see how good it would be if you could make this change.
Yeah. Okay, let me explain something. Trauma on a whole, the whole business of trauma, even if it's a block, Marcella, think about it this way, is more of it is about re-traumatizing. So the block that you may have, the brain is saying, I am getting something out of this block. that you having. And maybe, just maybe, your brain is saying, I like you this way because of the fact that I'm getting some dopamine hit. I'm getting, I'm feeling, you're giving me something, or else if the brain doesn't get something, it will start to urge you to change it. So if we're not changing certain things about ourselves, the brain already say, I'm getting something out of this. All right? Now, the whole idea is because the brain is getting something out of this, it's going to keep doing it like the little board in the beginning. If you were here to see the little board, it's going to keep doing it, and it gets dark after a while. But the brain is still getting something out of it. The moment you start to look at changing the situation, then the brain is going to say, you're going to need to give me something else. The brain is going to start to fight against it, that block. You trying to change that block. And then you have to understand that, look, I have to go through steps. It's not as easy as. I have to go through steps. That's why I show you guys in the presentation the steps that you need to go through to actually get these blocks out of the way. It's not going to take a 1 week, 2 week thing. For instance, how many of us make New Year's resolution? Do you know how long it takes on a daily basis to actually say, well, yes, I have basically started, not for my New Year's resolution. From January 1st, it takes you into November on a daily basis to actually start the journey of what you're doing for your New Year's resolution. It takes 8 to 11 months daily. So when we are talking about these little blocks that basically we cannot get over, the brain has already basically have it filed away that this is something we do that basically makes me, the brain, feels good, and all is done on a subconscious level. So when you look at what is happening, the brain is getting something out of it. So that little block, try to change it, and you'll see how much the brain is going to fight against you changing it, because the brain is getting something out of it.
So are you saying, I'm just conscious of time, are you saying we've got to almost reward the brain or give the brain something else to feel satisfied, happy, to reward the brain, to take away the impact of the blockage, whether that blockage is your brain, it's a safety mechanism or some way of channeling out something, to distract it and give it something else to be happy about. Is that what we're saying? And I've probably said that pretty clumsily, but is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we're creatures of habit. We're creatures of pattern. And if you're going to change that block, you need to develop safe and healthy habits to change it.
Okay. Has that helped Marcella at all?
Yes, I think it kind of makes me think about actually talking to my brain, actually bringing it into a conscious conversation about what could be going on. Yeah.
And I think there's so much to unpack here, and there's only so much we can do in one evening. But I think the power of the mind and the power of the brain, I think it's not to say that the brain in and of itself can control us, but obviously it's a very powerful part of who we are. But it is, from what I'm hearing, about bringing it in line with what we need as the whole body, not letting the brain do what it wants and run away. I'm sure, as Mark will say, that's not easily done. And your example of things taking 10 and 11 months to really work through is a very poignant one. And I think what that does for me, it reminds me that even when things aren't going exactly to plan, keep going, because sometimes when we're trying to achieve something, we're trying to break a habit, we're trying to form a better habit. If we stumble, sometimes we get really frustrated with ourselves and say, oh, I'm never going to do this anyway, and we give up. But that example of 10 or 11 months means we need to be in it for the long term, and some habits, some behaviors are going to take perhaps a longer time to break than we would want. But I'm encouraged that all can be broken with the right forces, with the right environments, with the right mindset. We can break bad habits and to form new ones, good new ones. Yeah. So I'm conscious of time. Is there any, Mark, is there any last point you want to make just before we close?
What I want to say, my thoughts is this. If any one of you dealing with trauma, I would and cannot and is struggling with it, in fact, then I would advise you to basically get some kind of therapy or some kind of therapy. Traumas in itself is very difficult, especially depends on any kind of trauma, in fact, very difficult to work with, to deal with on your own. So please get some help, and hope that everything is well. Again, guys, thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed this immensely this evening. And if you need me back to do anything more for your organization, for this group of people, you guys are wonderful. Thank you so much. Please let me know, and I will. If you want me to come back and do part 2 of this, I'm fine. You know,
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you're making that call. If anybody would like to see Mark coming back, maybe we could look at a specific issue. I know there's a couple of hands going up, so please contact us. I'll just put a couple of details in. You can email us at admin@inspiredsteps.co.uk. I will put a telephone number on. We've also have a YouTube channel. So what I'm going to be doing is this video, along with the other videos in this session, will be on our YouTube channel by next week. What I'm going to do is to speak to Mark, and if we can find some reputable contacts or suggestions of people who might be able to offer some counselling support, whether they're national organisations, you know, numbers that you might be able to call, we'll make sure that those are included at the end of the video that will be on the YouTube channel. So please have a look for that. The YouTube channel is Inspired Steps CIC, Inspired Steps CIC. So we'll make sure that the video does hold those details. Mark, I'm conscious someone's asking for your details now. Do you want to give them now, or should we include them onto the video? Or
you can include them onto the video, or I can give them. I have no qualms with that. I can just drop it in the chat if anyone wants it.
Yeah, if you're able to now, then Mark, if you could put it in the chat if anybody would like to take it now. But we will ensure that Mark's details are included in the video, as well as him putting some form of contact here now. And we will try and get some other support, potential contacts that people could reach out to if they are particularly struggling with trauma or any other issues that might be benefited from having some professional support. So thank you so much for joining us again this evening. Mark, you are being asked to come back. Some really positive comments, so thank you all for putting these comments. Next week we will be having a session which will be taken by Dr. Rebecca Greco, who did a session for us in Better Health Series 1. And next week we're going to be talking about exercise. We're going to be talking about the benefits of exercise, both in mind and body. You know, exercise is one of those things that most of us struggle with, of doing regularly, but there are so many health benefits for us being able to exercise regularly. So please join us again, same time, 7 p.m. till 8:30, the usual Zoom number and password. And we would just like to wish you all a good night. We thank you once again, Mark, and a good night to all of our attendees.
Thank you very much.
Let me just send my email address and
Bye.
Okay, Mark is just putting his details in the chat. Sorry, I was rushing. Mags, thank you very much for giving your details. Congratulations again. Charlene, congratulations.
Thank you.
We're certainly not bribing anybody, but there are more prizes next week. So please join us again and you may be picked out of the hat.
Yeah, please, my email address is mark@healthmade, that is my company.
What health?
Health Made Simple, not simple. Health Made Simple, SEMPLE.com. And that's my email address. If anyone does want to see me, I'm also on Counseling Directorate, the Counseling Directorate, and yes.
So
and
Mark's details are there.
Number there too.
Mark@healthmadesimple.com. Yep. So Mark@healthmadesimple.com. And I am sure, all being well, we'll be having Mark at a future session. So please look out for that. And again, we would wish you all a good night and hopefully see you next Thursday. So good night all. Thanks for your contribution.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.